I'm ready.
Hey, everybody, we're live, and I want to thank those who are seeing this for joining me for talking about my lawsuit. Not my lawsuit, but the lawsuit with the A's and all that stuff. This is a total change of pace. Those who are seeing this for joining me for talking about my lawsuit. Not my lawsuit, but the lawsuit with the A's and all that stuff. I like to hear myself twice. That's why I do that, Sherri. But anyway,
Just you gotta check. You gotta check.
I met Sherri. Yeah, I met Sherri Chung through Blake Neely at San Diego Comic Con, and as I was saying off camera, I haven't seen you since what 2019, 2018, right?
At
It's
least,
a,
yes, yes.
yeah, and Sherri was bathed in the DC universe thanks to Blake, the legendary Blake Neely. Let's say that straight out. And my goodness, my friend is the first female governor of the Television Academy.
Thank you, thank you. Of the music branch of the Television Academy.
Of the music branch of the
We're behind. We're behind. Apparently, there have been other female branch governors, but not in the music, not in the music branch at all. So, I know. So, thank you, thank you.
And I want to congratulate you on Gremlins, on Riverdale, on all you've done with the DC universe, but in particular, Kung Fu, if I can say this, is kick ass. I
Oh,
love
thank
the
you.
title. I am just, I listened, I've heard it before and I listened to it and I thought, this is not, I'll be, okay. I was born August 4th, 1962. Therefore, I will be 60 this year. Therefore, I remember the original Kung Fu. Thank you for not doing that.
Thank the show for not doing that. My goodness.
How did all of this start? I mean, because to me, you're on this rocket ride, and I love it. It's just awesome. But how did all
Oh,
this?
that's
When did it just go? I'll just ignite. And during the pandemic, I might add.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's funny when a person when one looks at their whole career or like look at where they are in their career, and it's hard to know what's sort of brewing in the background that's going to make it so that thing that call that you get tomorrow or next week or next month or next year was really probably set up a long time ago. Which is why when we were talking earlier, it's like show up and do good work, and be cool.
Yeah,
Like, or at least don't be a jerk. But the blind spot or sorry, I just gave it away, but the kung fu show in particular happened because Blake and I, as you mentioned, Blake, we and I were working on a show called Blindspot together, and that was with WB or with Warner Brothers Studio, but it was on NBC, and there was a producer, Martin Garrow, and a writer, another producer, Christina N. Kim, who we worked with on that show for 5 years. So when Christina N. Kim, decided that she wanted to write a pilot and and launch Kung Fu, she thought of me to do it, which was really great. So it came about as a relationship. But again, I didn't know that relationship was 5 years in the making. So both she and Martin Garrow brought me on to do this. And again, 5 years in the making. So I didn't know. What's interesting is that before I got that show, I said yes to doing a little demo, as I say yes to doing many demos. I did a little demo for something called Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai. And I did a demo like, I don't know, months, like probably in September, October of 2019. And then 2020 rolls around about March, April, right when things are starting to shut down. And I take a Zoom meeting with the team, with the Warner Bros. Animation team, and they're just like, we loved your demo and want to hire you. So again, that was several months before that, doing a demo for that. And again, another relationship of an executive who works on that project I worked with on a different project, and so she'd really put me up for something like that. So it's kind of a great question that you're asking, because it's really the truth for all of us. It's like it happens because of something that you did, good work, hopefully, showing up and doing that months and years prior, and then this just happened. So, but yeah, it is interesting that it happened over pandemic. I think that's just timing. I really don't think it was. I mean, who knows? People's minds change, production schedules change, did become different, I think, for all of us. So to say that it wasn't influenced, I think would be really short-sighted. But animation does keep going. That's what I did learn over it. So yeah, it's just a series of
But if I
events that
could,
started earlier.
if if you are with other people, I know you are, as kind as you have been with me over the years, it's no surprise,
Yeah.
because my compliment to you is you generally care about people, and that goes a long way. I just want to say that goes a long way.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I feel like we need more humans in the world. We don't need more people. We need more, well, or maybe we do need more people. I don't know. It depends if you can think of like a human as like, being just they're sort of the basis of like, an animal nature. But I appreciate you saying that, Zenny. And you've always been amazing and gracious and so complimentary and your interest in, you know, all of at the time Blake's team, because at the time we really were a part of Blake's team, and he was of course championing us, and we all had our own smaller projects that were not visible and not high profile going on in the background. But you were just always, again, real champions of everybody on his team, including Blake. And that's a big deal too. So it takes other people to believe. It takes people to believe in another person, and
Absolutely.
it just kind of comes around.
Yeah, it speaks to San Diego Comic Con's culture, but out of that, I have to ask you, how did you? I can't play it for copyright reasons, unfortunately, here at YouTube, but it will be attached here. The main theme to Kung Fu. How did you come up with something that is so rich in how, to me, Kung Fu should be? If that makes any sense, because I watched other interviews with you talking about, and I read other interviews. You were talking about, I think, what it means to discover yourself, in a sense.
Hmm.
Can you expand on that? Because it has a lot of parallels, I think, for anybody who is particularly uh, BIPOC. Okay, and I think we're all going through a sort of a revelation in a post George Floyd world about what it means to be authentically ourselves, even if it means authentically ourselves as an individual, right? But within that, you can fold out and create something that's timeless, which is what you've done. Talk to me about that journey.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I think it takes a viewer and a listener to tell the artist or the creative person in any capacity, like what, like, hey, you created something that resonates in this way. So thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and thanks everyone who does that, because again, the listener, the audience, are the ones who really kind of, you know just kind of decide what it is. But in terms of my journey, yeah, it was so unexpected. So I'm half Chinese and half Caucasian. I never really I didn't I grew up knowing that I was an amalgam of both of these, like cultures, I guess, if you want to say. But I grew up knowing that that was my ethnicity, but I didn't really grow up as much with the culture as I think other people who are, mixed race like I am. I think, other people grew up differently. And so again, there was no shame in it. It was just there was no specific celebration of it. So it's just not something I really connected with. And I do remember kind of growing up and just wanting to hide any way that I might have looked different. I think there was even a time where I was like, I didn't want my last name to be what it is, because I didn't want it to just so obviously say like you're different. Now, of course, being different is really celebrated, but it wasn't always like that, as we know. Um, but when I started working on Kung Fu, it was like I started watching these scenes, especially with Jin and Mei Li, that's the parents, and I started hearing their conversations and listening to what they're saying on screen, knowing that these were being written, knowing that the entirety of the writers' room in Kung Fu is of Asian descent of some kind. So they're coming with knowledge and of an experience and their own perspective, which is really great. So when I'm hearing these conversations, I'm like, wow, I wonder if this is what my grandparents said when they came over to the States. And I wonder if this is what they experienced. And even like my father to a certain extent as well, just the idea of sort of discovering what what my, not even just my ancestors, but my grandparents, like I said, and some of my near related cousins, just kind of what they experienced. And I don't know it, but it did cause me to talk more with them, to talk with my dad and say like, hey, tell me about like grandpa and Grammy, and tell me about like why this, and why did you this, or why did you not this. And it really engaged in a lot of conversation, and it's something that, you know I because I didn't grow up with it, it's something that I explored in the moment. In particular with the sound of the show as well. There's I think it's just I don't think I really set out. I mean, I wish I had like some amazing answer, but I don't really think I set out to do something that was Asian, or as I say, culturally specific, but still relatable. I mean, I think the only thing I really set out to do was I'm going to use traditional instruments when I can, where I can, when it's appropriate, and then I want to put them in sort of this Western music style, which is not it's not that's not a novel idea. That's done on Kung Fu Panda. I mean, that's done in a lot of Crouching Tiger. I mean, it's done a lot in a lot of settings where it's like you use very authentic, in my case, percussive instruments, Chinese drums in particular, and then an erhu. And then, but putting it and using it in a different, in like again, our more Western style. So I think some of the sound came about with that. Like, that was probably my only intention, and the rest of it was like, just by feel. It's like anything. I'm just like, just by feel, and hopefully it resonates, and then it did have to find its way over time. I think just like everything. So anyway, that's kind of way far above and beyond your question.
No, and I was thinking about the sound, and I don't know if you know Bear McCreary. Um, and I interviewed him when he did Godzilla King of the Monsters. A lot of what is in Kung Fu is in his music for Godzilla. And that has a very rich and timeless quality as well. So, what I was thinking about was how, and I go back to the original Kung Fu, where it was an attempt for white America to reflect what it thought Asian culture was. But in this instance, you're not trying, you know? It's more, it's you and the group you work with reflecting a character that is Asian, that is Chinese, in a modern context. And it's not you have to try to do that. It sounds like the blueprints lay it out for you. You know what I mean? You're not saying, well, gee, this is my impression or this is my prejudice. It's a big difference that I hope I'm articulating because of my what I've experienced in terms of age and culture in the United States. But it produces something that could be applied to any project like Godzilla or anything else, but still has that root. It's still kung fu. It's still,
Yeah.
and if I'm making sense, and that's what I find so rich. It's like this rich, almost bouillon-based soup of a representation of how kung fu should be, rather than what it was when I was growing up, and it was on ABC with Dave Carradine. No offense to him, you know, but it was a different time. And walking that walk to me is something that it sounds like you went through almost some epiphanies in there and some ideas. When was the aha moment when you said, "I've got it. This is it"? You know.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think you're completely making sense. And I have to give all the credit to, again, the creators and showrunners, Christina Kim, Bob Behrens, and all of the, well, and Martin Garrow, Greg Berlanti. I mean, the whole thing, and the writers of the show, because they're the ones that did what you did. They started out. They set out to not necessarily right the wrongs, but they started out to tell a story using, again, finding the new narrative. And what I love about the show too is that it's not telling you, here's a bunch of Asian people.
Mhm.
Here's some Chinese culture. Just
Right.
here's Chinese culture. Here's what it looks like. What they're doing is they're just showing you. There's, again, and an example that's been used before is like, when Nikki walks in the house, you see her taking her shoes off, but you don't. There's not a close up, or it's not like, Nikki's mom yelling from the kitchen, Nikki, take your shoes off. You know that we do that here. It's it's smarter than that, and it's like, okay, I don't think we have to I don't think we have to tell everybody, and it's just showing. And I really have to hand it to the writers and the producers for that, because as a composer, as a film composer in particular, or film and TV composer, I'm influenced by what I see, and that's what I was seeing. Now, interestingly enough, when you asked me like where did some of this come about, like the sound and where was the aha moment, was in the pilot, in the early stages of the pilot, and I was seeing this whole opening sequence that that I scored. I was just like, oh, it's gonna be. For some reason, I just was feeling it. There were just those lush, mountains. She was at a monastery, and it was just all these like overhead shots and drone shots, and just like, holy cow. And just to get inspiration, I had like pulled up images, just random images of like monastery in China, I mean, just like random Google images, and then put them on my screens and monitors, and was just writing even away from picture, but just writing ideas based on some of that imagery. So it's like I watched picture, and then I kind of went away just to get some ideas flowing. And then when I went back and I put it to picture, I'm seeing all this like, and then she's doing this whole montage of training, and there's and wow, she's really finding herself. And look at these just money shots. This show's gonna be awesome, and it was, and it is awesome. But what was funny is that, so I came up with this sort of like, I don't want to say operatic, but it was definitely, a high sweeping melody, and then it was going into, some of the more faster action sequences. And that's when I brought in the percussion thing. I wanted to be propulsive, and I wanted to use organic and authentic sounding instruments. And I show it to them, I present it, and they're like, this is really great. We're gonna we're gonna have a song for this entire opening. So just so you know. And I'm like, oh, okay. but they said what was great about that is they said, but keep that, because that's gonna go. And so in the opening sequence, when you see Julan killing Pei Ling, the Shifu, and then and Nikki comes in and she's like, no, and then she goes after revenge, and then it goes into the main title and everything. So that whole sequence was originally like part of, or some of it was really part of that opening sequence that ended up being a song. But the point is, that to me was the aha moment, because I was so like inspired by the imagery and what it really, it's kind of palpable. Like I could feel what everyone was trying to do, and it didn't feel like overly trying, it just kind of felt like everybody loves a good money shot, nature shot. Everybody loves a good fight sequence. Everyone loves a training montage. So they were kind of just doing all the things that we already love to see and watch and experience for ourselves. And I'm just like, let's put music to that, but let's do it in a way that immerses us into the setting of a monastery somewhere deep in China, and it's like, and I think it was just kind of the immersion experience, where it was like, I wanted to maybe immersive, I think is the right word, experience, where it was like, I just wanted to, like, I felt it. So I just wanted to kind of invite an audience into that as well. But like I said, I'm influenced by what I see, and that's what I was seeing in those early stages. And that's, so that was to me the aha moment.
Something that I think about when I talk with music composers from film is a documentary on Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where Jerry Goldsmith, rest in peace, was saying that Robert Weiss had heard the theme, the original thing, and he had this puzzled look on his face. And Jerry said to him, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Well, there's no theme. You can hum it." And I ask, is there a kind of a back and forth between you and the creators, or do they leave you alone and come up with something? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, Christina and Bob are really amazing, because they do. The answer to that question is yes. It's like an all around yes. It's like, yes, there's a back and forth, and yes, they have respect, and they respectfully just like let me do my thing. I mean, I say it like, wow, I can't believe I get away with this. But I say it, and I mean, obviously I wouldn't do anything that I didn't think was right
You
for
feel like
the show, but I'm like, I'm getting away with murder. But like, well, I mean, I feel like I'm getting away with such a creative, like fulfilling, you know, task or job, you know, like I'm really creatively fulfilled about it, and they really love it. And it's interesting how the sound is expanded. But again, I'm only going with what I'm thinking and feeling. So I brought in like a string quartet, and we do a lot of that, you know. So there's like strings and there's erhu, and then again with the drums, and those are all live as well. But you know, it's I think that you know, they're just kind of letting me have at it and do what I feel. And I think that that's really, I think that that's, and it's, I say it's rare, but that's not to slam any other project that I'm working on, because I actually get that a lot. But I've worked on enough things to know that it is kind of rare to not, well, I should say it's rare to have the people who hire you, which is, you know, it's already a difficult thing to trust somebody like, hey, I've been living with this for a really long time, and now I'm going to give it over to another creative like like yourself, Sherri, with music, and allow someone else to have their say and put their voice on it, and they're really open to it. And I think that they're very collaborative, and I think that that's partly the success, I would think, of the show, is that they must be like that with everyone else. They must be like that with their actors and their, maybe their stunt coordinators, with certainly with their writers. You know, they want the collective voice in it, which I think is just, it's really important, especially when we as a show are trying to do, and have, I think we have been doing it, what we set out to do, which was like, let's create a new narrative. Let's tell a good story. Let's tell a good story, but let's create a new narrative, and let's, you know, let's just normalize different races on television. Like, you know, let's just normalize that. It's really not
Yeah.
that big of a deal. And oftentimes the story isn't even about, you know, an Asian or a Chinese part of it. And that's when I don't use culturally specific music. When the story, it's not about that. It's about a universal theme. It's about a human thing. You know, what's the right thing to do? What's your destiny? You know, trying to, you know, believe in a person, or you know, that kind of thing. Or, you know, there's lots of different storylines in kung fu that are just, like I said, they're across the board, they're universal, and so they're of the world. And so it doesn't need to be specifically, you know, music about the Chinese culture, because that's not elevate, in my opinion, that's not telling a story. That's not letting a story, you know,
Right.
happen.
Right. It's more. This is more organic. You're not trying. You know, you're doing to me. You know, that's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Hey, in the time I know I'm reading, and because I want to. I mean, I feel compelled to talk to you for another hour and a half, but
I know.
in time, I know. Um, Talk to me about being on the board of governors of the Television Academy and the Music Division. How did that come about, and what does that entail? Because I've always wanted to ask someone, and now I have a who's doing it. You know, what's up with that? And in that context, what do you think about the whole Will Smith thing with the Academy and all that? So I gotta.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Well, I will say with becoming a governor, that was, again, that was something that was in the works for a couple of years. I wasn't really trying to do that. I didn't even know that was a thing. But every branch in the academy, and I don't know if members know this, but every branch in the academy has has two governors, but also a peer group executive committee. So another committee selected by the governors that meets on a regular basis and discuss all kinds of things, voting rules, membership, just, you know, just meet and talk about like events that they want to plan, or, you know, things for the community, you know, to take part in, and be engaged in, and that kind of thing. And so from that group, new governors will come from that. And the governor that I was replacing, who's unreplaceable, is Ricky Minor. And
Oh,
he's an amazing music director, as you know. I mean, he's just, and he's still, by the way, very much active in leadership positions. Yeah, I think he's now vice chair of the academy. So it's, you know, there's no getting rid of him, and rightly so, because he's really terrific. So, but he had approached me and said, you know, there's never, he said this, is there's never been a female governor in the music branch before. And that was about 3 years ago. That's all he said. That's all he said. Well, and he said, you know, I feel like, you know, that needs to change, and I'd love for that to be something else, that as I term out, you know, we make that happen. But he also said, you know, really other wonderful things, that, you know, like, hey, you're engaged, you're working in the industry, and it's, you know, you know, your voice matters, and I think that your voice should be part of this. And, you know, again, it's like what we're talking about at the beginning, having somebody believe in you, having somebody say, hey, I see you, and I see you, and I think your voice matters, which is something that you're very good at, Zenny. Like, it's, I mean, case in point with all this
that
whole thing.
made my year. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal, and somebody, when someone says that to you, if that resonates, it makes you want to step up and say, okay, cool, what is this about? Like you just said something to me, Ricky. I want. So that it came about because of that, and then there was an election process. There was, so it wasn't just a foregone conclusion, but I was elected by the peer group and by the academy, and that's a big deal. I'm still learning. More about I'm still learning about what it means to be a governor there. It's a really amazing community of people, the governors themselves, as well as the academy at large. And I love how I will admit that, I kind of went into it thinking, oh, this is kind of an archaic system, or this is a group of people who are, so far along in their careers that maybe they're not even working as much anymore. I couldn't be more wrong about that, by the way. I could not have been more wrong about that. They are, like I said, a beautiful and wonderful community who are very involved and really open and interested in making things better and progressing the academy as the industry progresses, not only just for diversity, equity, inclusion, but also just for, again, the I mean, just look at, the announcements that have come out recently about, like, they're they're not really calling it primetime and daytime Emmys. I mean, yes, there's still some of that naming that, we're trying to figure out the naming of all of that, but daytime Emmys doesn't really resonate anymore because of streaming and because things are happening at different times. So I mean, it's not just, oh, there's a need to progress. It's just like, no, the academy is really all about that. And I think that's just like a really wonderful group to be a part of. And it's such a, I don't know the right word, but it's such a fulfilling thing, I guess, or it's, to just kind of be a part of this group and be a part of, change when things need to be changed, but also to be a part of like history and like standards and, something that I'm really proud of. I mean, as you know, I work a lot in episodic. I work in film too, but I work a lot in episodic, and I really believe in the integrity of the award and the integrity of our academy and the integrity of just the work that we as a community are doing. And so I feel like it's really amazing to kind of to be a part, even just as a member, but now to be a part of, the leadership, as it were, in kind of falling in line with the history and the standards and the I'm losing my words, but you get it, and as well as be a part of change.
And
Yeah,
tradition too. Yeah.
tradition. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So yeah, it's cool.
I
It's
think
a
it's
lot of work.
cool, yeah. What projects are you working on, and what do you have coming up that you want us to know about?
Well, we mentioned Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai. That's coming out. I don't actually know when. I know it's coming out on HBO Max and also Cartoon Network sometime this year, but I don't know when. And then I'm working on a film with Netflix right now called Happiness for Beginners, with a director, Vicky White, who I've worked with before. She and I did The Lost Husband together. Both of those films are based off of books by the same name by Catherine Center. So someone I've never met, but I really love her work. And working with Vicky White is it's amazing to just, again, relationships. It's really cool to work with people who, we get along and we have the same vision, and it's a collaborative, creative process. So, and there's maybe some other things in the works, but it's a full plate. I'm fortunate. I'm blessed.
And I'm blessed to know you. I have to be honest. This is
Oh,
incredible.
same here.
I'm
Same here.
I'm going to hard stop myself because I have 10 other questions that I'm going to do for another time.
I'm writing the next Kung Fu right now.
Cool. You want to give us a preview of it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Hey, folks, you see this? Share it around. Sherri, I want to have you back. And stick around in the background, Sherri. Don't touch a thing. Folks, subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark Oakland News Now blog.com. We'll be back later tonight. And Sherri, congratulations and wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Zenny.
Woo!
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey,
I'd love to come back.
This is awesome. Stick around.
Thanks to your listeners. Thanks to your listeners and audience.
And hey, folks, pass it around because we're in the middle of the day. My viewership comes at night. So you all know what to do. Share it around everywhere. We'll stick around, Sherri.